Travis Wayne Goodsell. So those of you who are following me on YouTube will know that after I did the two where I'm speaking with you like I'm doing here, I guess it's to you because you're not speaking, well, you comments, you're speaking back, talking back, typing back. I spent the rest of the day revising the titles to provide you with the same exact information, that I do not do a single speaking part in. Those are what's called receipts. When you're following the money trail. And I told you, you don't know me, you don't know my vast knowledge. And that was an example. But the reason why I prefer this is because it takes too long to do those. I have to assemble them together. I have to load them onto the maker and edit them and cut them, paste them, and combine them. Then I have to make sure I label them correctly so I can find them, put them in the right file. Very frustrating. After all these years of not starting it right the first place, creating an organized system. And so when I tell you that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is false, but Joseph Smith is true, you need to understand that I'm coming from a place of knowledge, that I have the receipts, I have the research and the experience and the study to back it up. That's why I say what I say. And so for you guys to hide your thumbs downs, because nobody but me sees them, you're not doing anything to me. I know you're haters. That's all you're demonstrating, is that you hate. And you're supposed to be Mormon, which means you're supposed to love. So why the hell are you hating? You guys are just dumb. Literally dumb. Haters are dumb. They lack knowledge. They lack intelligence. There's a Mormon word for you. And so when I tell you in my titles, Mormons don't know Mormonism, you don't. Don't come attacking me, demonstrating you don't know Mormonism, proving my point. You need to be sound in your arguments. And Mormons don't know how to be sound. And so, instead of knowing Mormonism by study, you lash out, you get angry, violent, to defend yourself as Mormon and defend the church as you think. You use that as your justification, that you're protecting the church, you're on the front lines, hating those who attack the church. Dumbasses, you never even bothered to read your Book of Mormon. And so when guys like me come out with the receipts, all of a sudden you go running and hiding. This morning I saw that the night crew came in to get me up to 40 views for all but one of them. And I hope that I was able to reach some of you Mormons. That I broke you, not maliciously, but with the truth. See, maliciously was the Zoramites. The rich Zoramites who had the crops to sell to people, who made clothing to sell to people, they were the rich. But the builders of the synagogue were unemployed in Greenland, where Vicini found them, or mixing up the names now, it's been too long. Princess Bride. Excuse me, Princess Bride. But yeah, they're broken. They thought that their eternal existence depended on being able to attend the synagogue. Notice it's a synagogue. What are synagogues doing in America? Oh, the learning of the Jews, but we're supposed to be Christian. What's the difference between Jew and Christian? What's the difference between the Christ of a Jew and a Christian? Again, you're not doing your research. You don't know Mormonism. And when you come to learn the truth by being compelled to know, you are broken, like the Zoramites. And yes, compelled to know is in that passage where Alma is talking to the poor Zoramites who were cast out. And yeah, it says, better are those who believe in the first place and seek to know the truth through study, as he gives us the scientific field of vegetation to help explain that process of study. And says you're under more condemnation if you are compelled to believe and then you deny it. So that's all you're doing by putting your thumbs down. And so, yes, I want to break the wall of Mormonism, because you're in danger. These are the latter days. I'm trying to save your lives with the truth. Physically save your lives. We'll worry about the spiritual stuff after I save you physically. Church won't say the same. And, oh, okay. I did notes. I tried to put them in an order. Now I'm trying to read them. I'm trying to translate my notes. Okay, yeah, I already covered that. It's more work to do those kinds of video clip segment piecing togethers than it is to just say it. Even though I say it in 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 7-hour series. But there's a lot to talk about when it comes to religion. And so, yeah, one of the things you don't know about me, unless you've been following me and caught the video where I discuss it, or have wondered, why does he say Bruce R. McConkie wrote the chapter headings? Is that something that everybody knows and I don't know and should know and I'll just pretend to know? That's because I was in the scripture footnoting program Dos Equis. Duo. Sort of. Okay, so it was a situation where I don't get to apply. You don't understand that if you think I can just apply like a mission. They come to me. They sought me out. And because I was divorced at the time, I had to get the golden ticket from Jesus Christ himself. Did that video to explain that for you. And so it's necessary to study your scriptures and study history of the church through the scientific processing of forensic investigation. And I tried to simplify it for you, doing videos, trying to explain how to do it. And we're going to summarize a repeat of it. You want to focus on a particular time period, so the beginnings of the church. So you start with Joseph Smith Sr., for example. And because technically you have to go all the way back to Adam, and it can't be done, so it would take you too long anyway. And so you start at a point. And so you I started with Joseph Smith Sr. marrying Lucy Mack, and now they've got their family, they're living together in Vermont. And so I need papers for persons, places, events, and the dating chronological in each of those, and anything that occurred during that time frame in real history. And so they're in America, so American history events also need to be included in the context. And so when you get to the point where Joseph Smith is translating by the gift and power of God with his rock and a hat, now that the church has revealed that to us, you have the place, which is controversial because you have two different harmonies in Pennsylvania, and you've got to know through this process that I'm telling you to have separate papers. So places, Harmony, there's Harmony, Pennsylvania, north of Pittsburgh, but there's also the one that the Smiths claim is by Susquehanna River. That's a different location in Pittsburgh. And so you now have two papers, and you have to figure out which one are they referring to. They say Susquehanna, but there's some other things that we need to keep track and tabs on this one north of Pittsburgh. And those of you who are ex-Mormons, who are not Mormon deniers, know what I'm referring to. Sidney Rigdon. Because it was the Pittsburgh Press, or the press in Pittsburgh, where Solomon Spaulding dropped off a manuscript, but couldn't pay for it yet, and then died before being able to pay for it. So there's nothing the press can do. They can't publish somebody else's work on their own, and they just give it away. There's nothing else they can do with it. Sidney Rigdon was a regular at that press because he collected books. And the reason why is because he was a religious person who gave sermons. And you have to know what religion he was a part of. And then you have paper for the Baptists, Campbellites that he was a part of, separate papers to know their religious structure and belief systems and all that, knowing that they believe in baptism when a child turns 8, for example, laying on of hands. Although there were some things that Sidney Rigdon was disapproving with Alexander Campbell with, and left the Campbellites over this dispute as to the retranslation or revising of the Bible. Sidney Rigdon wanted to do the whole Bible and mesh the Old Testament prophecies with the New Testament. Alexander Campbell wanted nothing to do with the Old Testament. He wanted to focus on the New Testament. Sidney Rigdon said, I'm out. Did his own thing out in Ohio. And you got to follow where he moved, because he was in Pittsburgh. He left and came back and was right there by Harmony, north of Pittsburgh, for a short period of time before he went to Ohio, when Junior then started working on the Book of Mormon with Martin Harris. But we read that Joseph Smith, before Martin Harris arrived, was working on transcribing the characters from the plates onto parchment. Yeah, well, they weren't real, were they? What he was doing was making a second copy. And that second copy was the 116 pages that Martin Harris stole. And thus sections 3 and 10. But 10 is not 1828. So if you don't go to the primary source document in the Joseph Smith papers, you're going to be deceived with our editions and put the wrong date of 1828 instead of 1829. And then you're going to see something very funny and amusing when you go through. And so this is why it's essential to use forensic science when you're doing church history research. Because otherwise you're going to get down a forbidden paths of darkness, creating apologies for what Joseph Smith was up to. And so put science and logic first. There's no need to fear. The truth is blockbuster movie material. I keep trying to tell you this, and nobody believes me. And so, yeah, we'll do 2 more examples, and then we'll get into the King of Mormonism. So this is a separate video. So the Book of Acts. I have not done the Book of Acts video for you. I never got around to it, focusing on the church rather than Christianity and the Bible with the Book of Acts. But it's not literal history. There are no archaeological evidence of anybody but Paul. And Paul is used in the Book of Acts. Just like Herod the Great, he existed, and he's in the Gospels, or at least in Matthew at least. There's a problem though, because he dies in 7 BCE. And so I've talked about that with you. The Book of Acts, therefore, tries to give legitimacy and credibility to the book by presenting a familiar character that most people at that time, and I can't really call them Christians, they're pre-Christians. We'll call them pre-Christian. That pre-Christians knew about. And this book, after it came out to the public and had to be transcribed, characters had to be transcribed from the original plates, because they don't have photocopiers and print presses and all that stuff. Gutenberg press was the first invention and produced the Gutenberg Bible, wasn't it? It was Gutenberg. Am I mixing it up with the Bible that gets put in hotel rooms? First print press. Gutenberg. Isn't that what I said? Gutenberg, yeah, Gutenberg press. Yeah, the Gutenberg Bible was the first publication. Yeah. And so, you know, if you make a mistake, you can pull what's called an anachronism, where if you claim that the people in the Book of Acts had print presses, You've just exposed that the book hadn't been written until after the Gutenberg press. And so you got to be careful if you're going to try to scam people. Call something literal history, and oops, you put in an anachronism. And so we know that the book of Acts is apocalyptic literature too, because the setting is a pattern match, because that's what you're looking for in science. You recognize patterns and then identify anomalies, develop a scientific theory to be tested for confirmation to explain anomalies. That's how it's done. And so you'll recognize in the book of Acts some parallel patterns of older source documents. And like I've been telling you, Egypt is the source of mankind. Egypt is the source of religion and government and society and language, etc., etc., etc. Egypt. That is Adam. That is the Adamic language. That is the origin of man. And so if you're going to claim that, well, Joseph Smith said it was in Missouri, you're not understanding what he was saying. You don't know Mormonism, because you're not doing your research. You can't just read something and memorize the stories or memorize scripture masteries and think you're smart. You're not. All you know how to do is memorize, and you could probably do well on Jeopardy, but you're not IQ smart. There's a big difference. Science teaches people how to learn how to learn. Do not diss science. Any prophet of the church who tells you to be intellectually minded, to lower your intelligence, to deny science, they are false prophets. It's real simple. The glory of God is intelligence, not ignorance. And yet, I saw it with my mother. She would be confounded by me in a debate as a kid, and she would just go silent, and she'd try to forget about it. And so when she tried bringing it up again in a future time, I just throw it right back at her, because I didn't forget. That's the white supremacy within Mormonism. They do something wrong, say something wrong. Brad Wilcox, remember him? Oh, you forgot? The video I did this morning. Mormons didn't realize that Mormons and the church was racist. 1978 came around, and so Mormons now, as white supremacists, say, well, we're no longer racist. Okay, we'll tell people we're no longer racist. And then over time, we're not racist. Well, we've never been. That's not us. We have blacks in the church. Some of my best friends are black. And they don't get it. And so, yes, whenever something happens, like I drop a bombshell of receipts on you guys, or condemn Mormons directly for hating, not loving, yeah, Mormons scatter like cockroaches with the lights turned on. And I saw a lot of those on my mission, and not Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, with Mark Augustine, the Judas. I owe you, Mark. Show yourself. I owe you. Coward. He doesn't like it when I use my finger and talk. It annoys him. But yeah, I saw that with my mom. She goes silent and ignores it and hopes it goes away. And she told me to do that when kids at school are bullies. She told me, well, just ignore them and they'll go away. That's the Mormon white supremacist thinking. When science says, no, the Book of Mormon is not history, Mormons ignore them and hope they go away. That's what they do. That's the pattern of Mormonism, without fail. And so, yes, I know this. And so I do these videos, and you run away and hide, and you don't click, you don't watch. And so only the ones who do watch are the ones who came to show their love with a thumbs down. And justifying it in their own minds why they're violating the one and only law. And so in the book of Acts, you have chapter 15, where Peter is not the head of the church. Because in the Gospels, upon this rock I will build my church. And so the Catholic Church, they literally fulfilled it. They claim they've got the tomb of Peter, who there is no archaeological evidence that he existed. And they won't let us in the tomb to do DNA testing by scientists for the supposed bones. But the Vatican built on top of the tomb of Peter. It's the Church of Peter, not Jesus. Jesus isn't the foundation. Peter's the foundation, literally. But in the book of Acts, chapter 15, there's a group discussion among the apostles and Jacob, the brother of Jesus. But it's James. James is Jacob in Hebrew. James is Greek. Jacob is Hebrew. And as you're doing the scientific forensic test, you know the meanings of the word usurper. The usurper replaced Jesus. The brother, like Judas betrays Jesus. Jacob, you know, the Old Testament this year. I'm doing those videos for you to clarify stuff. Yeah. Jacob the usurper. Abraham usurped the birthright blessing from Pharaoh. Isaac usurped the birthright blessing from Ishmael. Jacob usurped the birthright blessing from Esau. Ephraim usurped the birthright blessing from Manasseh. And there were others. Esau's child. I just did it. But yeah, it had the same pattern. There's a pattern that you will observe. Even though the anomalies are different names for the persons involved, the pattern that's the same in all of them is that usurping theme of the birthright and blessing. And so here it is again. You know, Jesus was usurping Caiaphas's office. Caiaphas wanted to murder Jesus. Just like all the other usurpers are the ones who got usurped. And in that same passage in Matthew, same chapter, Peter also betrays the Christ. Peter is seer and Egyptian. And there's Egyptian in the Bible? Yes. And so Peter, the seer, whom, if people knew about the gospel stories, knows that Peter's supposed to be the foundation of the church. But James gets the last word and everybody follows his commands. He's in charge. He took over for Jesus. The usurper, after Jesus is murdered, but he gave up his own life, is now the head of the church. And what are they doing now? Peter has a dream, like Joseph for this Sunday's lesson, that now it's okay to be a big pig too. Bacon. Bacon strips. Or bacon strips, I guess is technical trademark name, or whatever name. But yeah, and it was, not just bacon, but it was a debate with Paul, because Paul only wanted to convert the Jews. The rest are heathens. And so Peter was getting that dream to go to all the world to gather in the elect to bring them back to Zion for the last days Christ. Now do you see what's going on in Acts? Because Constantine created Jesus. If you say Jesus is real, you're pulling an anachronism. Because Constantine created Jesus. Out of all the apocalyptic stories during the Roman period, he didn't choose Samson, he didn't choose Abraham, he didn't even choose Moses. That's the Christ of the Jews, by the way. He chose Jesus, who gets the name from Matthew rather than Emmanuel, which we are told from the prophecy that he won't say the name Isaiah, that it's Jesus, which is the reverse of Isaiah. Instead of Yah of salvation, it's now, Yah of salvation is Jesus, and now it's Isaiah, which is salvation of Yah. So there's something going on that only scientific forensic research will reveal the truth of. When you allow your religious biases to dictate the text, you then start demanding that science change their methodology of research for archaeology, anthropology, and history books to conform to your belief system. And then you get Christians suing in the Supreme Court to have creationism taught in school because you believe that the Bible is literal history and that the earth is only 7,000 years old and that Adam came 7,000 years ago and 6,000 years ago and 4,000 BCE, because a certain man created it, gave us the timeline of 4004, or Dark Age Jews, after creating the Masoretic text, the Rambam, determined that the Jewish calendar is also to be different, but around the 4000 BC time period. It's 3000 something or other. If you don't acknowledge those facts and you impose them on the Bible, you're going to be wrong with your interpretation. And you're most likely going to start a holy war. Or you're going to put a thumbs down on somebody's video trying to tell you the scientific truth. And so, what gave rise to the book of Acts is the Canterbury Tales by Chaucer. See, it's not literal history. Those were specific stories, not about a King Arthur during the movie with is it Clive Owen? And then what's her name? Drawing a blank. I just saw it last month again. But yeah, awesome song in there. I should probably use that for my theme song in the description below. We will go home across the mountains. Brings me to tears. And so, if you didn't know, the Canterbury Tales gave rise to what should have been a devolution, because as you go over time, you lose the origin, because thousands of religions all over the world, and not a single one of them is the full Egyptian origin religion. They've all taken bits and pieces from it, changed the names, changed the language, added culture and ritual, and that's called devolving. It's not de-evolving, it's devolving. No extra E. So it's frustrating to say. And so you'd think that this next one after Canterbury Tales would also be a devolving de-evolution of the Canterbury Tales, which came from the book of Acts, which came from the Egyptian records in origin, that of Osiris being murdered by Set, who usurps the kingdom, Jacob, and then Horus is born through the wife, who is the church, to come back and restore the throne of his father from the usurping church. And so the gathering of Israel, the gathering of the body of the Christ is Osiris. The broken bread for the sacrament, the Last Supper. Why is it the Last Supper? Well, there's a Last Supper of the Lamb in Revelation at the temple for a wedding feast, Doctrine and Covenants 58. Does that have anything to do with anything? Is there a star date given in Revelation 19 talking about this? That's coming up very soon, within about 2 months or 2 years. Is there a reason why I'm doing these videos? Trying to get through to you? Yeah, well, it's Monty Python and the Holy Grail. That was an evolutionary step forward. Best British movie ever. Alright, so let's give you one last example with the church before we finish with the Christ of Mormons. Brigham Young, in that video this morning, yeah, all about Brigham. And you'll have seen the coin, and you'll have seen the date, 1849, the state of Deseret. Well, the state of Deseret never existed legally. What's going on? Why don't we just ignore it and hope it goes away so that it can come back on Fox 13 News another day? So just isolating the dates. July 24th, 1847. They arrive and choose the right place in 1847. What was the territory originally? Was it the United States? Was it Utah? Why is it unnamed? Was there a name? It's Mexico territory. Oh, that's interesting. So Brigham Young had polygamous wives that he trafficked out of the United States into Mexico territory. Pause for effect. Polygamy is a crime in the United States, if you didn't know. To traffic women out of the country in sexual relationships, that's called human sex trafficking. It's a crime. And so Brigham Young was fleeing the country. He was not the Mormon Moses causing an exodus from the evil America with the Constitution divinely inspired by Jesus. No. He was an evil man. And so, what happened? How did Mexico territory, when did Mexico territory become the United States territory? Oh, 1848, the very next year. And so the coin, 1849, after the United States came in and took over the land from Brigham Young. They just ignored him outright and did their own thing. Brigham Young was pissed. And tried to do all those kinds of things, to say, well, if we're being forced in the United States now, well, then we're now called the state of Deseret. No. Utah territory. So, yeah, he just was in denial. Oh, I wonder where Mormons got denial from. Ignoring and hope they go away. Yeah, well, they weren't going away. They were coming in now that America was now America, no longer Mexico territory. And so, yes, people can now pioneer to the west to settle the land. So what did Brigham Young do? Oh, hey guys, we're going to split you off. You're going to go settle the land of Deseret. And Mountain Meadows Massacre occurred. You see how all this is fitting together? You see what I'm talking about in my videos. And so the Perpetual Immigration Fund also was in 1949, because Brigham Young wanted to solidify the Salt Lake Valley as his. And thus the European converts that were deceived by Brigham Young and his 12 that it was now the name of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they then came a running, because when Brigham Young called for them, he needed them to get here, but they were poor, and so he developed the scam of the Perpetual Immigration Fund. And notice the coin. You're not allowed to have your own coinage when you're subject to a nation such as the United States of America. But it gets worse. So the converts come over from the Perpetual Immigration Fund to America, come to Salt Lake Valley, and Brigham Young says, you got to pay it back, so get to work. But Once you do, you get citizenship. See what he was doing? He was trying to amass Mormons at a greater pace here in the Salt Lake Valley. Because America's coming. The big bad mean Babylon. That's not Babylon. It's a religion. It's the usurping religion, Nelson. The usurping religion that Joseph Smith prophesied in section 115 would call themselves the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the latter days. Good job, Nelson, you fulfilled it. Joseph Smith is a true prophet after all. So, in 1851, now it's Utah Territory. United States obviously won, but Brigham Young is still upset. And so what does he do? He incorporates the church. He founds the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the latter days. It's supposed to be Zion, but he calls it Deseret. But he refers to it in his sermons as Zion. But he talks about how Mormons generally believe they're going to go back one day to Missouri. And Joseph Smith, 19 July 1840, Joseph Smith specifically says, many of you believe we're going back to Missouri. No. You're wrong. It's Southern Illinois. And there's a reason why it's Southern Illinois. If you have all your papers and you go through the Knights Templar and the native Indian tribe that's right there in Southern Illinois, and every other prophecy all over the world, all knew about that. And a certain date that's coming up in 2 years. Which is why I'm trying to warn you. Because the great and abominable church doesn't want to do it. They've got their own plans right here instead. And those plans are racism in his conference talk that year, as well as polygamy practiced openly now. No longer a sacred secret. Shh, don't tell. Now it's open, but it's United States territory, so they're subject to the laws of the United States. But Brigham Young created his own Constitution of Deseret, which was based on racism, of which his racism throughout his life and passed on from president to president and disseminated among the Mormons is the reason why of the news clip yesterday, several clips apparently, about the racist covenant in the 1930s and 1940s. It's very simple. It's not the true church if you're a white supremacist, if you're racist, sexist, bigoted, neglect the poor and the needy, the sick and the afflicted. You're supposed to feed the sheep, Peter. Don't neglect the sheep. And so, yeah, he was openly in defiance of the United States by openly declaring polygamy is now the exaltation. And Brigham Young wrote, dictated, section 132. So don't be fooled. Oh, man, I gotta get my laundry. I thought it was way late. Alright, so I'm going to change the laundry and then come back for the Mormon Christ. Okay, I'm back. Back in red. Not black. So, Matthew chapter 1 starts off by saying, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David. So we have to put in, the son is descendant. Sure. Okay. Sure. Okay. But that's the prophecy from the Old Testament. That's why Matthew is putting it in there. That's what he means. But the Old Testament was written during the Roman period as well. And so then we go back all the way to Abraham. That's the first one. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the usurper, Judah. Why Judah? Went over it with you. There's a reason why. Has to do with Moses. Has to do with Moses. And so then they throw in the chronological order by which they had thus did the books of Kings. Because each book of Kings is a separate book. But the Jews combine them together so that 1st and 2nd Samuel, which are 1st and 2nd Kings, are in order according to the similar timeline here. That's interesting. Written during the same time period. They all came up with the same time frame. Interesting. Because again, no. There's separate books, each with a separate message. And so it's not until you get to one of the kings that have been identified in archaeology that you know what's going on. But if you were to utilize science, the house of Israel needed to be established, and so the different tributary lands became the mythological 12 tribes of Israel. But it all goes back to Osiris. That's who began that concept. And so Israel was not the 12 tribes of Israel. They were a mix of the sea people who came in, the Hyksos that were in the land, and others who migrated from Mesopotamia. No, not Abraham. But that's where the story was developed, from that concept. And then others who, were Egyptian and were living in the land. Because Joseph is correct in Abraham chapter 1 that the seed of the pharaohs, the blood of the pharaohs from Canaan, who was punished by Noah, his grandfather, for what his father Ham did. That's weird. I wonder if Abraham chapter 1 explains that for us. Did Travis do a video on it? Yep, already did it. And so then we get down to verse 15. And Eliud begat Eleazar. Eleazar begat Mathan. And Mathan begat Jacob. And Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary. Oh, okay, he's the father, huh? I thought David was the father, but, son, we'll just change the definition. Of whom Jesus. So Mary gives birth to Jesus, right? And Joseph, right? Joseph is the father of Jesus. He impregnates Mary. Well, what then are we talking about here? And he knew her not till she had brought forth her firstborn son. Weird. Jesus is not the descendant of King David. That's weird. And yes, he's called Jesus instead of Emmanuel. They shall call his name Emmanuel, so they call his name Jesus. Which is the reverse of Isaiah, whom they don't name. Spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying. So yes, there's something else going on. And if you're going to take this as literal history and just ignore the errors, you're going to be wrong, and you're going to end up doing other things as a consequence. And maybe there might be something like the Holy Grail, but don't do it just for that. I'm pretty sure that's a once only thing. And so what's going on here? Because King David is a king. We went over in this Sunday, no, it was the missing one, because that gave the genealogy of Esau. And it says that it's not the genealogy, it's the king list. The descent of kings from Esau. So Esau still got to be the king. So what's going on? Jacob's a king, Esau's a king? How is that possible? It's because you don't understand the culture of the time. You had Pharaoh of Egypt who ruled all the way into Canaan, Israel. Canaan originally. And so he can't have, the internet to communicate. You have horsemen and chariots and such have to go out, and so if these kingdoms, which are tributary, they have to give tribute. They have to bring the tribute to the capital, to Pharaoh. And then Pharaoh, his almighty wisdom, divvies it out to his people who are in need of it at the capital. That's the way it worked. That was the marketplace. And so the tributaries are to support the capital. And so when the tributaries miss their deadline, if you've seen the movie Ants, the locusts extort from the ants, and they come as scheduled. Where's our food? You mean the scientist dumped it all into the water? And so, Pharaoh then sends out his military to go make sure they pay, and to remind them who they are a tributary of. And because Canaan is right there by Mesopotamia, and the Hittites, and the Syrians, and Lebanon, lots of fun times ensued, and you get Armageddon. Literally, Armageddon, during David Moses the Fourth, Dawood Moshe the Fourth. And then that little Jerusalem vacation trip he took in the middle of the war. But if you're going to mix literal history with the Bible story, you're gonna get screwed up. You're gonna start demanding that archaeologists and scientists conform to your religious lies, your biases. And so these king lists are the Christ. They're anointed. That's the Greek word for Christ. The Greek word Christ, translated as anoint, the anointed one. And so Matthew, likewise, giving a king's list to show that Jesus is going to restore the usurped kingdom. Oh, there's the pattern. Just like Moses. Just like Manasseh or Ephraim and Joseph and Jacob and Isaac and Abraham, etc. There's the pattern. And Noah, going all the way back to the first one talked about in Scripture. And so that's why Jesus is referred to as the King of the Jews, because he's supposed to be the usurper who restores the kingdom, and he doesn't. He dies like Osiris. He doesn't restore the kingdom like Horus. But he's talking about coming back again, sort of. Calls him the Son of Man. Man, huh? That's weird. I thought Constantine says he's like supernatural. And man can't even comprehend that he's supernatural, because he's so supernatural. And so, let's go over Moses for you. So after giving the king's list of the house of Israel, chapter 2, there went out a man of the house of Levi. Who's Levi? Well, you had to watch the Sunday school lesson of the missing chapters to know what was supposed to have been part of our lesson, but they were uncomfortable with that one chapter. So they just took out those 3 so that you would not have them. And then they put the one that even the Jews don't want to talk about in this week's lesson, but was removed from the manuals, as I went over with you. Yeah, Levi lost the birthright blessing status as the runner-up, because it's Reuben, Simeon, Levi, then Judah, the betrayer. Phonetically the same as Utah, the betrayer. It's amazing how that worked. Did they purposely know all this, and they're just teasing all of us that nobody knows? We're keeping it a sacred secret, but we're giving you clues. I mean, because, like, seriously, Samson, he's having a wedding feast with a lion house and a beehive house, and he marries the great and abominable church bride. How in the world could they have known this unless they purposely did it that way? Brigham Young and those who changed the names of those 2 buildings knew, and they just aren't telling Mormons. It blows my mind. And so, Levi, because of that rape of Dinah incident by the Shechemites, where the northern kingdom's capital is, Levi loses his birthright blessing over it. He's no longer the second runner-up. Simeon was a part of it, lost his first runner-up status. And then Reuben, he wanted to, so he also lost it. So Judah's left. But then he betrayed Joseph. But through Judah comes David, the David-Moses dynasty of the 18th Egyptian dynasty of pharaohs. But don't mix literal history with, you're going to get screwed up. And so, of the house of Levi, the great and abominable church, lost the birthright blessing. Great and abominable church. See the pattern? So he takes a wife of the great and abominable church. Levi. Lost the birthright blessing. because of the rape of Dinah by the Shechem, like Prince Shechem. And thus came Moses. He's not a Pharaoh, but he is raised in the great and abominable church of Pharaoh, as he himself is of the great and abominable church, but the story author gives him the genealogy of Levi. So there you have it. And so when you're looking for the Mormon Moses, because you do know that there's a man like Moses, please tell me I don't have to keep repeating that over again for you. I've been repeating that over and over and over again in different presentations for quite a while now. All of you newbies should be familiar with it. Should have come across your perusaling if you're not watching every single one of my videos. Should have come across it at one point or another. So yes, Joseph Smith is the founding Christ, just like Abraham is the founding Christ, or Noah, or Adam, as a pattern. And he was murdered like Osiris. His kingdom church usurped. And out of the great and abominable church will come the one to restore it. That's it, that's all. It's not some supernatural stuff. You're looking for a born and raised Mormon that fulfills each and every single prophecy in all scriptures. And he doesn't ride on flying horses. He's not supernatural. Use science and logic. The patterns. And so the name of the father is not Levi. His name is not Moses. We've already gone over that with you. Sun God. And Judith is his mother's name. Etc., etc., etc. And so don't be limited by the scriptures. That's why Joseph Smith wanted more scriptures, is because there's more prophecies about the Mormon who was to be the Christ, the man like Moses, the learning of the Jews Christ. And so I'll close with this in case you have missed it. And you're being broken right now because the church lied to us. Section 103, verse 15 and 16. Behold, I say unto you, the redemption of Zion must needs come by power. Church says Salt Lake Temple Square is Zion. Therefore, I will, it's a future tense, it's not Joseph, I will raise up unto my people. Mormons. Raise up as mortal man, mortal parents. Notice how they didn't name his father? Named his mother. Notice how Jesus doesn't have a name for the father? It's unknown who the father is. Came from the temple. Angels were involved. So you're looking for the temple of angels in the great and abominable church, where his parents will be sealed for time and all eternity in the great and abominable church. And then conceive and give birth to a Mormon, who likewise will have gone through the great and abominable church temple of angels. So there's no way this Mormon can rig it to self-fulfill it. It's impossible to do. And that's where I cannot use science to explain it. That's the one thing that bugs me. I can't explain it. But nonetheless, there it is. Who shall lead them, the Mormons, like as Moses led the children of Israel. That's the Exodus. The Exodus story is a apocalyptic literature like the book of Revelation for the latter days. And thus the Christ. Because you are the children of Israel, the seed of Abraham, and must be led out of bondage from the great and abominable church. As your fathers were led at first, so shall the redemption of Zion be. And so, to show you that the man like Moses is the Christ, we just go to Joseph Smith history, where Nephi, not Moroni, comes to Joseph Smith, talks about Egyptian gold plates of the Knights Templar of the Holy Grail bloodline, from Moses chapter 7, blessed is he who through whose seed the Messiah shall come. And so, referring to Acts, come full circle. He quotes the 22nd and 23rd verses to Joseph Smith. The only New Testament passage not in the Old Testament. All the others are in the Old Testament. What's he doing? There is that version in the Old Testament, but he refers to Acts instead because it's exactly as written in the New Testament of the 1769 King James Version of the Bible, which had the Apocrypha. Why don't we have the Apocrypha, Spencer W. Kimball? In the footnoting process number 1, uno. What happened? Why'd you take it out? We're supposed to add scripture because it testifies of the latter-day Mormon man like Moses, the Christ. He said that that prophet was Christ. Right there. And it's confirmed in 2 Nephi chapter 3, where Joseph Smith is included. Joseph Smith, the founding Christ of Mormonism, and the prophecy that Joseph Smith knew of a future Mormon Christ who would come out of the great and abominable church that would murder Joseph Smith and usurp his church. He knew. Go figure. So there you go. See how much of a difference there is when you actually do your study, do your research. And so, now that you know, now you can go back over what they've talked about, what they've done, and be horrified. And then you'll understand why I'm trying to save you. Why I'm trying to rescue you out of bondage. Because again, the Mormon Christ, there's no way he could rig it. He can't self-fulfill it. Brian David Mitchell tried it. Yeah, he sort of Chad Daybell. Yeah, oops. All these horrible tragedies by people who think that they can self-fulfill Scripture. They can't self-fulfill it. So, there you go. The Mormon Christ. Oh, I keep throwing the papers away. We will go home is on those papers. I had to rewrite it.